For media, it's one of the things that makes media art, is that they can make us experience emotions in sort of new and interesting ways, maybe ways we didn't expect, and games have a few things that others don't. So one of the main ways media makes us experience emotion is via empathy. We're all kind of familiar with this. This is how it's traditionally done in books and movies. If you've gone to any decent movie recently, chances are it's made you feel some emotion. We kind of know how empathy works. It's like if I'm watching Glee and I see people being the underdogs, I think, oh, I know what that's like in my daily life, or I can imagine what that's like in my daily life, and so therefore I feel an emotion on behalf of the characters that I am watching represent. If it's done well, it's the emotion that the authors wanted me to feel. And we know that this can be really powerful. If you've read Where the Red Fern Grows and you didn't cry at the end, you're a horrible, heartless person. And so we can feel sad, we can feel uplifted, and it's all on behalf of the characters that we're watching presented in other media. Games do this too, often through cutscenes. For instance, we might play this and we're like, oh man, Kratos, I'm so sorry your wife is dead, that really sucks for you. I guess you should probably go on a murderous rampage now because your life is so terrible. And it's sometimes better than others, but sometimes this kind of empathy can directly conflict with the game mechanics because you think, well, Link, if you're so concerned about the princess being kidnapped, why are you taking time out of your busy rescuing her schedule to herd goats? Or search for beetles in all corners of the world? Shouldn't you be more worried and going to rescue her? So the other main type of emotions that games let you experience is actual, real, experienced emotion. By this I mean the triumph or frustration or whatever you feel when you're in the act of playing the game that's the result of you interacting with the game's mechanics. For instance, if I'm playing Mario Kart, I'm not thinking here about any kind of narrative context. I'm thinking, oh my god, don't use the boost, you'll go off the edge! And I'm, I'm really tense, and I'm desperately trying to do something, and I'm feeling this as a result of my interacting with the game mechanics and my ability or inability to steer the car and stay on the tracks. But the problem is that with this is that sometimes this can remove us from the game narrative context. We become sort of more concerned with our own performance than with what the character is feeling, even if it's directly contradictory to what the character is supposed to be feeling. I think the best games do some kind of crossover between these two emotional extremes. They find a way to meld it so that we feel empathy in a certain way and we feel real emotion from the game mechanics, and they combine them in a way that's interesting. There's probably thousands of ways to do this, but I'm going to talk about two here. The first type of crossover that I think is interesting is parallel trajectories, which is the idea that the character and the player experience similar or the same emotional arc at the same time. My absolute favorite example of this is from Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. There's a sequence called Aftermath, wherein you've previously just been in a helicopter on the edge of this nuclear explosion, and you think, oh, that's it, the character's dead. But then, all of a sudden, you start a level as this character, and you're like, oh, hey, I'm still alive, and it's hopeful, and you're, crawling your way, although you're injured, out of this, burnt-out husk of a helicopter, and then you see this, and you realize how slowly you're moving, and you start to sort of, this slow dread comes on to you. You're like, wait a minute, what's the goal of this level? How am I supposed to get away from this? And as you're sort of crawling through this wreckage, you come to this slow realization that you can't win, you can't save the character, and the character will die. So both you and the character go through this arc of, hey, I'm alive, hey, I get to keep playing as this character, then this slow, dawning horror, and then I can't win this level, and I can't survive as the character. If they had let you beat the level, then you would have been happy, but you can't, so because it's parallel. The other type of crossover that I wanted to talk about is implicated empathy, which is like regular empathy, except that it directly implicates you as the cause of the events in the game, and so you are responsible for the emotions that the characters in the game are feeling, or should be feeling. My favorite example of this is from Metal Gear Solid 3 Snake Eater. There's a scene at the end where you're fighting your mentor turned rival who betrayed your whole society, and it's a big epic boss fight at the end, and it's in a field of flowers and there's music, and it ends with a cutscene where the mentor is prone in the field of flowers, and the character has the gun, your character has the gun pointed right at her head. And instead of shooting her in the cutscene, it takes you back into gameplay, and your character is just standing there with the gun. You can't move, you can't do anything, but it doesn't continue until you press the button to pull the trigger and kill the character. And then it goes right into another cutscene. So there's no point in taking you out of the cutscene there for that little bit, except that it directly implicates you as the person who made the decision to kill that character. Therefore, you are responsible for the emotions that went through the guy's mind when he killed his mentor. So in conclusion, I think sort of a good goal to look at in designing games is trying to find interesting ways to combine emotionality in, empathy and experienced emotion, and find some kind of interesting emotional game nirvana that will be unique. The end.